There are parts of life nobody can walk through for you. People can love you, they can advise you, they can sit beside you when things fall apart, they can remind you that you are not alone. But eventually, there comes a moment when all of that disappears. You are left with a decision you cannot delegate, a fear you cannot explain away, a loss nobody else can fully feel, a question about your own life that no one else can answer. And strangely enough, these are not the moments that make you weaker. They are often the moments that reveal whether you have built any strength at all. The Stoics understood something we often resist. Some of life's most important battles are private. Not because you have been abandoned, but because certain forms of strength can only be developed when you are standing face to face with yourself. You don't become independent by needing nobody. You become strong by learning that, when necessary, you can remain steady even when nobody is there to carry the weight for you. There are 9 things almost every person eventually has to face this way, and the last one determines what all the others were really building toward. 1. You must face your own mind. Notice what happens when you suddenly have nothing to do. The room is quiet. There is no conversation, no television, no notification, no one asking anything from you. Within seconds, your hand reaches for your phone. Most people call this a habit. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it is avoidance, because silence has a strange ability to reveal what noise allows us to ignore. The thought you've been postponing, the conversation you don't want to remember, the decision you keep delaying, the disappointment you buried underneath work. When the distractions disappear, those things return. This is why solitude can feel uncomfortable before it becomes peaceful. The problem isn't necessarily that you have too many thoughts. The problem may be that you have spent years refusing to hear them. Seneca warned about this restless tendency long before smartphones existed. People changed cities, environments, routines, and circumstances, hoping they could escape themselves, only to discover that they had brought the same mind with them. A different location cannot automatically create a different inner life. The Stoic response is surprisingly simple. Practice being alone with your mind. Not for hours. Start with 5 minutes. Sit without your phone. Don't force yourself to meditate perfectly. Don't try to manufacture peaceful thoughts. Just notice what appears. What are you avoiding? What keeps returning? What are you afraid to admit? That discomfort is not necessarily a sign that something is wrong. It may be the beginning of honesty. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly used private writing as a way to examine his own judgments and behavior. His power did not remove the need for self-examination. If anything, it made that responsibility greater. And the same is true for you. Eventually, every important decision will require your own judgment. If you never practice listening to yourself, silence will feel like an enemy. If you do, silence becomes a place where you can finally hear clearly. 2. You must face your failures without turning them into an identity. Failure becomes dangerous when you don't examine it. You either hide from it, or you turn it into a verdict about who you are. A business fails, and you decide you're incapable. A relationship ends, and you decide you're unlovable. You make a serious mistake at work, and suddenly one bad decision becomes proof that you're a failure. But failure is an event. It is not automatically an identity. Other people can comfort you after something goes wrong. They can tell you it wasn't your fault. They can remind you that everything will be okay. And sometimes you need that. But nobody can perform the private examination for you. At some point, you have to sit down and ask, what actually happened? What was outside my control? What part belonged to me? What should I have done differently? What can I learn without humiliating myself? This is where strength begins. Not when you stop failing, when you stop needing failure to mean that you are worthless. The Stoics treated mistakes as material for improvement. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly examined his own conduct, asking whether he had acted well and where he had fallen short. That isn't self-hatred, it is course correction. Think of a craftsman whose work comes out badly. He doesn't need to destroy himself over the mistake. He studies the piece. He finds the weakness, he adjusts his technique, then he tries again. Do the same with your life. Comfort can help you recover, but honest reflection is what helps you grow. 3. You must face grief without trying to escape it. Some pain cannot be solved. It can only be lived through. When someone dies, people may surround you. They may call. They may bring food. They may sit beside you. And all of that matters. But nobody else can inhabit the exact shape of your loss. Nobody had your memories. Nobody loved that person in precisely the way you did. Nobody carries the empty space in exactly the same place. This is why grief can feel profoundly private, even when you are surrounded by people. The Stoics were not telling people to become emotionally numb. They understood loss. Marcus Aurelius experienced repeated deaths within his own family and lived through devastating illness and war. His philosophy was not an attempt to pretend these things didn't hurt. It was an attempt to build a mind capable of holding pain without allowing pain to destroy one's character. There is an important difference. Facing grief does not mean refusing support. It means refusing to make distraction your only method of survival. You can talk to someone, you can cry, you can accept help, but eventually there must also be moments when you sit quietly with what has happened. You allow yourself to acknowledge, this mattered to me, this is gone, and I am still here. That acceptance does not erase the loss. It changes your relationship with it. And sometimes strength is nothing more glamorous than learning how to carry something heavy without pretending it isn't heavy. 4. You must face the fear that nobody can act for you. Someone can encourage you. They can give you advice. They can even stand beside you. But courage cannot be transferred. Imagine you have spent 2 years thinking about leaving a career that no longer fits, or telling someone the truth, or starting something you might fail at, or ending a relationship you already know is wrong. You can ask 20 people what they would do, but when the moment arrives, your hand still has to turn the handle, your voice still has to speak, your feet still have to move. Epictetus made a crucial distinction. Events themselves are not always what disturb us. Our judgments about those events often create much of the suffering. Fear grows inside the story we tell ourselves. What if everyone laughs? What if I fail? What if they leave? What if I regret it? The mind can turn one uncertain possibility into an entire catastrophe. So sometimes courage begins before the action. Sit alone and examine the fear. What is the realistic worst outcome? Not the disaster your imagination creates at 3 in the morning. The realistic one. Could you survive it? Could you rebuild? Could you learn? Could you continue? When you answer those questions honestly, fear often becomes smaller. Not because the risk disappeared, because you discovered that you are more capable of surviving uncertainty than your fear suggested. That is earned confidence. And earned confidence is far more durable than reassurance. 5. You must face being disliked. One of the most exhausting ways to live is to constantly manage other people's opinions. You replay conversations. You wonder why someone sounded distant. You check whether they approved. You change your behavior because someone might misunderstand. You say yes when you mean no. You remain silent when you disagree. And underneath all of it is one hidden demand. Please don't reject me. But you cannot build a strong life while making everyone else's approval responsible for your peace. Epictetus placed enormous importance on distinguishing what belongs to us from what does not. Your judgment belongs to you. Your choices belong to you. Your effort belongs to you. Another person's opinion does not. That does not mean criticism should be ignored. Sometimes someone dislikes you because they see something you need to correct. Listen, examine it. If there is truth, change. But if there isn't, you must eventually learn to let another person's judgment remain theirs. You don't need to win every misunderstanding. You don't need to correct every false impression. You don't need everyone to understand your choices. A powerful form of maturity is being able to say, I have examined this honestly. I know where I am wrong. I know where I am not. And I can live with someone disagreeing with me. Start small. Say no without writing a paragraph to justify yourself. Express an honest opinion without immediately softening it. Allow someone to be mildly disappointed without rushing to repair their feelings. You are not practicing selfishness, you are practicing tolerance for disapproval, and eventually you discover something liberating. Being disliked is uncomfortable, but it is survivable. 6. You must make decisions without borrowing someone else's certainty. There is a subtle form of avoidance that looks like wisdom. You ask everyone what they think. Your parents have an opinion. Your friends have an opinion. Your co-workers have an opinion. You watch videos. You read articles. You make another list. And somehow, after all of this information, you still haven't decided. Sometimes more information is necessary. But sometimes you're not searching for information. You're searching for permission. You want someone else to make the decision so that you won't have to own the consequences. The Stoics placed enormous value on judgment because judgment determines how we respond to circumstances. Advice is useful, but advice is not ownership. You are the one who must live inside the consequences. So before asking everyone else what they think, spend some time asking yourself, what do I actually value? What kind of person do I want to be? Which choice is consistent with that? What am I afraid will happen if I choose honestly? This changes everything. You stop collecting opinions and start evaluating them. You can still listen, but you are no longer handing your steering wheel to whoever speaks most confidently. A strong person isn't someone who never asks for advice. A strong person is someone who can receive advice without surrendering their judgment. 7. You must face your mortality. There is one certainty every human being shares. You will not be here forever. Most of us know this intellectually. Very few of us allow it to change how we live. We behave as though there will always be another year, another conversation, another chance, another morning, another opportunity to become the person we keep saying we want to become. The Stoics practiced memento mori, remembering mortality, not because they were obsessed with death, but because mortality clarifies life. If you genuinely understood that your time was limited, what would become less important? Whose approval would matter less? Which argument would suddenly seem ridiculous? What would you finally stop postponing? Who would you call? What would you begin? Mortality strips away the illusion of unlimited time, and that can be frightening, but it can also be freeing. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself how quickly human life passes and how easily even the most powerful people disappear from memory. The lesson wasn't despair, it was perspective. You don't need to become famous enough to be remembered forever. You need to live today according to values you can respect. Try something simple. Spend 5 quiet minutes imagining that your time is much shorter than you assumed. Not to frighten yourself, to clarify yourself. Then look at your ordinary life again. Some things may suddenly look incredibly small. Others may become impossible to ignore. That is the strange gift of remembering death. It teaches you how to recognize life. 8. You must face uncertainty without demanding an answer. Some chapters refuse to explain themselves. You don't know whether the relationship will survive. You don't know whether the job will work out. You don't know whether the decision you made was correct. You don't know what next year will look like, and the mind hates this. So it starts creating stories. Maybe everything will go wrong. Maybe you'll lose everything. Maybe you should have chosen differently. Maybe something terrible is coming. The mind would rather have a painful answer than an unanswered question. But uncertainty isn't a temporary defect in life. It is part of life. The Stoic response is not to predict the future perfectly. It is to become less dependent on the future behaving exactly as you want. Ask 2 questions. What is outside my control? What is within it? Other people's choices belong in the first category. The outcome belongs there. The future belongs there. Your effort, your preparation, your honesty, your next action, those belong to you. Focus there. You cannot control whether the arrow hits the exact place you intended. You can control how carefully you prepare, aim, and release it. That is enough. Not because uncertainty disappears, because you stop demanding certainty before you allow yourself to act. And that is a profound form of freedom. 9. You must face the person you are becoming. This is the deepest one, because every other struggle eventually leads here. Who are you becoming? Not who do you claim to be. Not who do other people think you are. Who are you becoming through the choices you repeat when nobody is watching? Every day, you cast small votes for a future version of yourself. When you tell the truth, even when lying would be easier, you become someone who values integrity. When you tolerate discomfort instead of immediately escaping it, you become more resilient. When you keep your word, you become more trustworthy. When you constantly seek approval, you become more dependent on it. When you repeatedly avoid difficult decisions, avoidance becomes part of your character. This is why character isn't built in dramatic moments alone. It is built quietly. 1,000 private choices eventually become a personality. A personality repeated long enough becomes a life. Epictetus understood that philosophy was supposed to change how a person lived, not merely what they could explain. You don't prove your principles by talking about them. You prove them when circumstances make those principles inconvenient. So once a week, sit somewhere completely alone for 20 minutes. No phone, no audience, no performance. Ask yourself, who am I becoming through my daily choices? Is the direction of my life consistent with what I claim to value? What have I been avoiding because facing it would require me to change? And perhaps the hardest question, if I continued living exactly as I am now for another 5 years, would I respect the person I became? Don't answer quickly. Let the question stay with you. Because becoming stronger isn't about creating an impressive version of yourself for other people to admire. It is about becoming someone you can trust when life removes the audience. That is what all 9 of these confrontations are really preparing you for. The silence teaches you to hear yourself. Failure teaches you to examine yourself. Grief teaches you to carry what cannot be changed. Fear teaches you to act without guarantees. Disapproval teaches you to stop outsourcing your worth. Decisions teach you to trust your judgment. Mortality teaches you to value your time. Uncertainty teaches you to focus on what belongs to you. And all of them eventually lead to the same question: who are you becoming? The answer will not be found in what you say. It will be found in what you repeatedly do when nobody is watching. This is where Stoic strength becomes real, not in appearing invulnerable, not in pretending you don't need anyone, not in becoming cold. Real strength is being able to receive love without depending on it for your identity, to receive advice without surrendering your judgment, to receive criticism without surrendering your peace, to experience grief without running from it, to experience fear without allowing it to make every decision, and to stand alone when necessary without believing that being alone means being abandoned. You don't need to become fearless. You don't need to become someone who never struggles. You need to become someone who can remain present when the struggle arrives. Because eventually, every crowd becomes quiet. Every opinion fades. Every distraction ends. And there you are, not abandoned, not punished, just face to face with the one person you have been carrying your entire life, yourself. That is where strength is tested. And, more importantly, that is where it is built. If this reflection gave you a different way to see something you're facing right now, stay with that thought. Don't rush away from it. And when you're ready, watch the next video. There may be another part of your life waiting there for you to face honestly.